We'll continue discussing the Hagadda Shel Pesach. We've discussed Kaddish, Kiddush. We discussed Urachatz, washing the hands before the wet vegetable, and Karpas, the vegetable we use. So the next step is Yachatz. So what do we do at Yachatz? So, Botzim es hamatzah hemsoras lushnayim. There's 3 matzahs we have set up under the matzah cover or outside the matzah cover. And what you do is for Yachatz, you break the middle matzah, and it's a chelok hakoton magzirin loben shtei matzos hashlemos, and you take the small portion and put it back with the other 2 full and complete matzahs. There's a chelok hagadol, and the big portion, what do you do with the other bigger portion? You put it away for the afikomen that the kids like. So that's Yachatz. We break the matzah. So why do we break the matzah? Why are we breaking the matzah now? We're not eating matzah now. We're eating matzah later. We're eating matzah further on in the meal. So why are we breaking the matzah now? So there's a famous Gemara in Pesachim, and Daf Kuf Tes Vav Amid Beis 115b, that we know the Gemara tells us that the matzah at the Seder night must be broken. Why? Mar darko shel ani beprusa, because that's the way a poor person eats, and we know lechem oni. The Gemara tells us oni from the lashon ani, poor person. So therefore, the matzah represents poor man's bread, and therefore we act like a poor man. What does a poor man do? He takes the matzah. Let's say you have a piece of bread. So he doesn't know where his next piece of bread is coming from, so he takes a little piece now to eat, and then he puts the rest away for later. So since matzah represents lechem oni, poor man's bread is water and flour, therefore that's why we break the matzah. In addition, there's an interesting explanation from the Das Kenim al HaTorah, the Das Kenim Bali Tosavos on the Pasuk in Parashat Shmos, chapter 12, verse 8, that the breaking of the matzah is symbolic of Kriyas Yamsuf. That it symbolizes, just like you break the matzah, and it's symbolic of the breaking of the Red Sea, of Kriyas Yamsuf. That's one of the miracles that God did. And the Chida adds another explanation, that it symbolizes that, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu split the time. So we know we split the Red Sea until you break the matzah. But how long were the Jews supposed to be in Egypt? Slaves in Egypt. So over about 430 years. Strictly speaking, it was about 210, 215. So that's what it means. We break the matzah to signify that God, in His mercy, hastened the process. And instead of taking 430 years or so, it only took 210, 215. And obviously it also gives us the message of, which is the whole night of Pesach, is that even during the worst of times, that's where the Geula, the redemption, usually comes. That the matzah, so we find this dual element throughout the Hagadda, the concept of the mix between slavery and freedom, of Golas v'Geula. And therefore the broken matzah represents that. And, whichever explanation you want to take, and lechem oni, and therefore you break the matzah before you begin the main part. Now the main part now is Magid. So Magid is the beginning of the mitzvah of the night. What is one of the biblical mitzvahs of the night? One of the biblical mitzvahs of the night is Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt. And that's what we're about to begin. The Maggid, we tell over the story of what happened in Mitzrayim. And that's what we're going to see as we go through it. And we see it we're going to see it in the Manishtana, that as the Gemara tells us, Marchel begenus v'siyem b'shvach. You begin with the bad stuff, the sufferings, and you end up with praise. In other words, it begins with Avadim Hayinu L'Paro b'Mitzrayim, and we end that God took us out. So we see the whole night of Pesach, we talk about our slavery and freedom. So the obvious question is, tonight we're celebrating our freedom, not our slavery. So why don't we just skip right to the good stuff? We should begin the Hagadda with, and God took us out of Mitzrayim, etc. Why do we have to go through the whole long history of Jews being slaves in Mitzrayim? So the commentators explain, because the power of contrast. To fully appreciate freedom, you have to know what slavery is. And therefore, we have to go through the slavery times to appreciate freedom. It's like someone we all appreciate sight, but one who couldn't see and now has the ability to see, they can even have greater appreciation. And similarly, someone who's a slave only appreciates it, freedom, once you become free. So that's what the whole night we're going to see, the contrast between the slavery and freedom, but the focus is on the freedom part. And that's what we're going to talk about on the biblical mitzvah of telling over the exodus from Egypt. Even though we have a mitzvah all year round of remembering the exodus from Egypt, but on the night of Pesach we have a mitzvah to go into more detail with question and answer and go through the experiential. So the question the commentators ask is, where's the bracha? Why don't we have a bracha on Tzipor Yetzias Mitzrayim? That we know before we do a mitzvah, we make a bracha. We make brachas on biblical commandments, on rabbinical commandments, and even minhagim, like saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. Achatzi Hallel, that's only a custom. So where's the bracha before Tzipor Yetzias Mitzrayim? So there are many answers given. There's the famous answer of the Chasam Sofer, that since we have a mitzvah, Chayiv Adam L'Ros Etz Atzmo Ki L'Yatzo Mitzrayim, we're reliving the Hagadda. So he says, really, we do make the bracha. The bracha is Asher Galano, we make at the end. So why are we making the bracha at the end, not in the beginning? Because since we have an obligation to feel like we're leaving Egypt now, so we can't make the bracha until we're free, so therefore you make the bracha at the end. However, others suggest, there are many answers given to this question. Some say that the reason why we don't make a bracha is because, what does a bracha say? Asher Kedeshano b'mitzosa v'tzivanu. When we make a bracha, we underscore the point that God commanded us to do something. And that's usually how it works the whole year. But on the night of Pesach, it's not the night to tell you, I told you so, because I said so. Pesach, the Torah, the Hagadda goes through Pesach al Shema, Matzah al Shema. We go through the reasons, and they're very important, the reasons. And therefore, we go ahead and we explain the reasons. So they point out that, so as Rav Nissen Alpert explained, that's how, that the night of Pesach we want to accentuate the freedom, not the slavery, so therefore we don't make a bracha. Because we make a bracha, it underscores it because you have to do it. Like this 3-day Eish, Rav Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg explains, why no bracha on the mitzvah of Mishalach Monos on Purim? So there are many answers, but since the purpose of Sholach Manas is to be Marbes Shalom, to make peace with one another. So he has, you know what, I'm giving you this gift because I have to. Asher Kiddush Shalom b'mitzvah. So therefore, we want to tone it down. So when the bracha undermines the mitzvah, Chazal never instituted a bracha. So that's why some say there's no bracha. So then how does the Hagadda begin? You reveal the matzahs, and you pick up the plate, and you say, Halach ma'anya diachalo. We read through, this is the bread of affliction, which our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Let all who are needy come and celebrate Pesach. So it seems very interesting. How does the Hagadda begin? With an invitation to people to come and eat, come and celebrate Pesach with us. It seems a little strange, and now you put it in. Who's going to hear you now? Very good. I'm going to be sitting in my home and I'm saying, all are hungry, come and eat. There's no one here. The people who are invited already are here. It's sincere here. How come you weren't inviting the people who are in shul? What do you mean you're inviting people now? Is it some joke? So the answer is, it's not some joke, but it's a token. Really, you did your inviting already. You invited the people weeks or days in advance, or you're inviting them in shul. This is only a token invitation. So the question is, but why make a token invitation? It's nice to invite people, but why is that relevant to the Seder? Why are we beginning the Seder? And we know all beginnings, it sets the tone for the whole Yantif. So what message are we sending tonight? We begin our Seder with Halach Ma'anya, with inviting anyone who is needy. And needy doesn't necessarily mean just poor. There could be lonely, poor, a lot of needs, etc. So they point out that, so they say in the name of Rav Soloveitchik, that he says, you know why the Hagadda begins with inviting guests? Because what are we focusing on tonight? We're focusing on our freedom. And we can discuss what is is there a more objective definition of freedom? Like Rav Moshe says, you should be drinking wine even if you don't like it, because wine itself is a drink of freedom. Or does I go with more of a subjective one? Do we go with more of a subjective type of simcha? So Rav Soloveitchik goes with that in terms of grape juice, he says. But the point being is, however you can define freedom, as the Torah tells us by the luchos, that it says charis al luchos, engraved, al tikra charis el cheres. It means, don't read it charis, engraved, but cheres, freedom. The one who is free is one who is osek batorah, the one who is involved in Torah mitzvahs, who disciplines themselves. It's not just doing whatever they want. And that's how do you show you're free? By having the ability to invite guests over. Poor people don't have the ability to do anything. It's whatever the master tells them they do. And that's what Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, that inviting poor people to the Seder serves in affirmation of freedom, as slaves lack the ability to invite guests to the homes of the master. And it seems to be, it's not just we know we have a mitzvah of simcha all year round. That might be true also. We have a mitzvah of tzedakah all year round. But it seems to be the mitzvah of inviting guests here doesn't seem to be under the general mitzvah, but it seems to be a part of the unique mitzvah of Yontif. As the Rambam writes in Hilchos Yontif, chapter 6, Halacha 17 and 18, when the Rambam talks about simcha, rejoicing on the Yontif. And of course the Rambam writes, even though the primary mitzvah is done through eating the meat, the karban shlamim, however, really the main mitzvah is to bring joy to family and friends. And in particular, the Rambam writes, poor people, converts, orphans, and widows. And he says, one who closes the door to the poor and doesn't invite them in, Ein zu simchas mitzvah ela simchas kreso. This, you don't fulfill the mitzvah of joy of a mitzvah, but it's joy of one's stomach. And that God doesn't want. It's not enough. Of course, you're supposed to enjoy Simchas Yontif, but in addition, there's a special, besides the general mitzvah of tzedakah, it's a special Indian in Hilchas Yontif that one has to bring and invite guests to the Seder to make sure everyone else is enjoying in it. And that's what it's all about. That's as they say, giving is living, as we all know. As we know, doing a chesed transforms a person. Like there's a big difference between chesed and tzedakah. Charity is result-oriented. As if a $100 bill drops out of my pocket and a poor person picks it up, I get a mitzvah tzedakah. But I don't become a better person by it. I didn't even know I did it. That being said, I do get rewarded for it, but it doesn't transform me. If I didn't know I did it, how could it transform me? Maybe on a metaphysical level, but certainly not consciously. But chesed, that transforms a person. And that's why the purpose of chesed is, as the Rambam writes, is it better to give $100 at one time or to give $1 100 times? And the Rambam says it's better to give $1 100 different times. So obviously it isn't necessarily better for the poor person. I think he prefers the 100. But the Rambam is not focusing on the poor. The Rambam is focusing on you. For you to become a giver, you have to get in the habit of giving. And that's what we all know. Who loves who more? Do parents love their kids more, or the kids love their parents more? So logically, I would have said that the kids should love the parents more because the parents give them everything and the kids take. So therefore, you would think the kids would love the parents more. Yet we see the reality is different. Why is that? Why do parents love their kids? And the answer is because exactly the opposite. Because how do you develop a love for someone? By giving. As the Hebrew word for love, ahava, the root of the word is hav, to give. And how do you show true love? By giving and not by taking. If you got into a fight with someone and you want to do them and you want to reconcile the relationship, if you do a favor for them, don't do it because you think they're going to like you more. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You do it for them, so you'll feel a certain feeling for that person, so you'll feel better about that person. But life's all about giving. And that's why, ultimately, here it's not just a regular tzedakah, but here inviting a poor person, an orphan to your meal, it transforms the whole meal from a simchas kreso, from this stuffing your face, which the Rambam does not talk favorably about, to the ultimate simcha on Yontif. The ultimate simcha on Yontif is to make other people happy as well. And that's how we begin, by inviting guests. Then we have the Manishtana, the 4 questions. Again, they seem to be. It says we asked the 4 questions that the Abarbanel points out. One and the first 2 are about matzah and maror, and the last 2 are about dipping and reclining. So the first 2 have to do with slavery. Matzah, poor man's food, and maror. And then on the other hand, you have the dipping and the reclining are positive things. So what is it? So that's what we mentioned. The whole night is one big contrast. It's true that we went free, but avadim hayino aparo b'mitzrayim. And it says, "V'ilo lo hotzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu es avotim b'mitzrayim." Harei anu v'anenu. It says if we wouldn't have went free that night, we'd still be slaves to Paro in Egypt. What do you mean we'd still be slaves to Paro in Egypt? Lincoln freed the slaves. We'd be free by now. So it doesn't mean physically we'd be slaves anymore. But if we would have stayed any longer in Mitzrayim, spiritually speaking, we never would have got out of that type of spiritual bondage. And then it goes on, Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer, and then we have the mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, that was in the Mishnah in Brachas, and it goes through the scope of the mitzvah. Is it during the day, during the night? Does it apply during the time of the Mashiach? And then we get into the four children. The four children, we know the Chacham, the Rasha, the wise son, the wicked son, the Tam, the simple one, and the one who's unable to ask. So we pointed out, so there are many answers to some symbolism of the four sons. I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe says over that the four sons represent the four generations of Jewry. That the grandfather who came over from Europe, steeped in piety, keeping the Shabbos, keeping the mitzvahs, that's the Chacham. His son, who moved to America into the melting pot, so he quickly threw away his Judaism. He was coming over, he threw his tefillin away, and he became a secular Jew. The third generation is the Tam, the simple child. He's very confused. He sees his grandfather making Kiddush, keeping Shabbos, eating kosher, but he sees his father does it. He grows up, he doesn't know what to make of him. And the fourth generation probably didn't even see his grandfather. She'enu Yidei Elisha. He doesn't even know how to ask a question. He sees someone lighting candles. He thinks it's someone's birthday party. He doesn't realize it's Yontif. And unfortunately, we could add to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's soon becoming the fifth generation. That say what you want about the four sons, at least they're at the Seder. The fifth generation is they don't even know they're Jewish. They don't care they're Jewish. They don't come to the Seder anymore. And that's the job is V'Hagata Levincha Bayomahu. It's our job not just to make sure we're having the Hagadda, we're doing the mitzvah of the Exodus from Egypt. We have to ensure that our kids are going to do it, and our great-grandkids. And just to conclude, one more thing is someone to point out, perhaps Rav Nissen Alfred I heard her from, the four sons are really one son, one child. We go through all different stages in life. We have our wise moments, we have our rebellious moments, we have our simple moments, we have the moments that we no longer could ask a question. But perhaps it's really a prototype of everyone. We all go through different stages in life, and we all have to recognize, hopefully we focus on the wisdom more, but we all go through different stages, and the one child is representative of all the different types of children.